they didn't stop fighting the fight for paid leave that they so deserve. As too little too late as this is, it wouldn't be happening if they had not been organizing like they have.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Just yesterday, Norfolk Southern became the third rail company to guarantee paid sick days to workers. Bernie Sanders said the grassroots trade union movement provided paid sick days to provide paid sick days to rail workers is gaining momentum. Norfolk Southern became the third rail company to guarantee paid sick days to workers. Now is the time for all rail companies to follow suit and substantially improve rail safety. The agreement, which the company announced Wednesday, provides sick time to roughly 3,000 unionized track maintenance workers. The deal allows employees to take 4 paid sick days a year. Wow. And removes a stipulation which worker contracts that required them to give their supervisors 48-hour notice before taking personal days. You just 48 hours before, Adam, whenever you get sick, you just have to tell them, oh, I'm not sick right now, but 48 hours from now, I'm not going to be able to work. So just letting you know, boss man, that's what they had to do before.
Right. And if there's, anything you've picked up over the last couple of weeks in this rail disaster, boy, don't you really feel confident knowing there's only 2 people on a train that's miles long, and both of them may be deathly ill. Right. They may be running 102-degree fever. Yeah, they could be whacked out of their mind on all kinds of medications that they had to take because they couldn't stay home sick. Boy, doesn't that make you feel just really safe and secure in the American heartland?
That follows from the week before the Union Pacific Corporation announcing a similar agreement with 2 of its unions that represent 2,100 rail workers to provide them with multiple days of paid sick leave, a key goal in recent labor talks. In a statement on Monday, the Brotherhood of Railway Carmen shared that the agreement, which takes effect on April the 1st, will cover up to 4 days of paid sick leave for Union Pacific employees in the union, also allowing them to convert their personal leave days for sick leave. So that's, up to 4 days still.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously too little, too late. That said, I want to really applaud Railway Workers United.
Indeed.
And them in particular, of all of the rail unions, obviously, but I think the RWU caucus has really just shifted the narrative. I think they have done a good job in, engaging with the public, even engaging with shareholders and other folks who have some sort of influence here. When Congress and the White House prevented the rail strike back before Christmas, they didn't stop fighting for sick leave. They did not stop the fight for paid leave that they so deserve. And so, as too little too late as this is, 4 days, okay, great. But it wouldn't be happening if they had not been organizing like they have, right? There has been some shifts, and that is through the power of their collective action and collective organizing. And I really, applaud their advocacy. There's a lot more left to be done, but the fact that they were able to get now 3 major carriers to budge and offer some concessions on paid sick leave, I think is definitely a victory. That's a victory, especially knowing that the rail carriers have such leverage that the United States federal government would be on their side. I think that's huge because you are taking on some of the most powerful companies in the world, backed by arguably the most powerful state in the world. So really, I applaud the workers for continuing this fight, and I do applaud those few in D.C. who have stuck by those workers during this fight, including Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, absolutely. According to Bloomberg News, Union Pacific's agreement with the Brotherhood of Railway Carmen and the National Conference of Firemen and Oilers represents approximately 8% of its total workforce.
Right. So
workforce.
we're seeing, they're chipping away at it bit by bit, craft by craft, carrier by carrier. But this could have easily been avoided. This could easily be fixed right now with the stroke of a pen.
Yeah, and one thing to note about that, at least, is that it didn't have to be this way. None of this would be necessary had Obama not excluded the rails from his executive order in 2015 mandating federal contractors provide employees with at least 7 days of paid sick leave. At least 7 days, which is still not an excessive amount. I think, frankly, it would be reasonable for federal contractors. I think that with our tax money, we ought to be leading the charge on benefits for workers, pay for workers, safety for workers. Lifting the standards so that, because there are only so many people who are federal contractors, who are federal employees, but if the federal government were to raise those standards, private employers have to compete with public sector employment, with federal contractor employment. And so you could raise the standards that way, even without implementing these, authoritarian whatever laws, minimum wage laws or anything like this. And so I think that there should be more guaranteed pay sick days than 7, but Obama did that in 2015, and he specifically excluded the rails, even though rail companies are federal contractors. I mean, there's not even a discussion there. They're federal contractors, but because they do work for the federal government, and so they ought to, under this executive order, they ought to have to give their workers 7 days of paid sick leave. But Obama excluded them from this, and so now, here we are downstream of this, and we've had this huge disaster. We have 17 rail derailments, train derailments, 1,700 train derailments every year. And of course, having the sick days is not the only thing. There's just this consortium of issues, but the sick days is really what the workers have kind of rallied around as the symbol of the broader issues that they're having in their industry. And the idea that Obama would allow this to continue in 2015 when it didn't have to, and the idea that Biden still allows it in 2023, and the idea that Biden pushed through a rail contract that workers voted down without even this minimum, when every single other federal contractor has to do this. Every single other federal contractor, and yet the rails get this special carve out.
Right.
And it's such a special carve out that Biden broke a strike over it. Like, it's bizarre. It's totally bizarre.
Yeah,
and unnecessary.
And the thing is, all these other federal contractors that do have to abide by this executive order, they're still trucking, right? They're still profitable. And in fact, I would imagine most of those federal contractors would love to have the profit shares that the rail carriers have had in recent years. I'm sure they would love to have those kind of margins. So it's not as if the rail industry can't afford it, whatever the rationale may have been at the time. We all know the reality is that the rail industry was successful in lobbying against it. Now, I mean, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
I mentioned Senator Sanders earlier. I know that Bernie wrote a letter to the White House a couple of months ago asking President Biden to fix that omission, to revise the executive order and to include the rail carriers under that order. And again, that would solve the issue. I guess, there's a discussion there to be had about, this is what happens when we rely on, politicians and the federal government to fix these issues for us. Mm-hmm. But, at the end of the day, there is a clear method to resolve a very, very dire issue for thousands and thousands and thousands of workers on an important industry, one of the most important industries in our country. It could easily be done. President Biden, if he wanted to recover some of his reputation among rail workers and working people more broadly, why not? Why not come right out, sign the executive order, declare, you know what? I don't care what these railroad barons have said. We are going to guarantee all of their workers have at least 7 days of paid sick leave. It would be a huge win for them politically. It would be a huge material benefit for these workers and their families. It would change their lives and improve their lives. And theoretically, you can campaign on that, right? That's a deliverable to people.
Right.
In nearly every corner of the country, right? There are rails all over this country. And even in places that have, minimal union presence, there are folks who work on the rails.
Yeah.
There are railroad union members everywhere. So I agree with you. I think it is, it's very poor politics. But again, that assumes that the goal, the end goal,
have the same goal as us,
is to win elections through helping people. And I think, there's decades of data and evidence to point to the contrary, that is not what they're trying to do. And my personal opinion would be they would rather lose elections than actually challenge capital and challenge the ruling oligarchy in any meaningful way. That's my thoughts, but, maybe I'm a wild conspiracist.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.